It's 91.3 Hope FM. Daria Swisher in the studio, and I have a very special guest with me, Dr. Greg Smalley. He is the Vice President of Marriage at Focus on the Family. In a recent survey we did, a lot of our listeners said that they would like some more marriage advice, so we really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. And let me ask you, what is your advice for engaged couples or newly married couples?
I would say to find an older couple who's, further down the road, more experienced, and just begin hanging out with them so that you can ask questions on what they've done, what are some of their secrets. I remember as a really young husband, maybe I'd been married about 6 months, my wife Erin and I were at a dinner party. I ended up talking to this husband, probably been married about 50 years, and just said, hey, what are some things that you've learned, or give me a tip, something. And I'll never forget what he said. It was so simple, but so profound. He said, I never let my wife leave our house without giving her a compliment, because I don't want the first compliment that she hears to come from another man. And I love that. And I've been married 30 years now, and so I do that. I don't leave my home without complimenting my wife. So it's just recognizing that there's amazing wisdom out there. And so for an engaged couple, for a newly married couple, to find that couple that you're going to learn from, who you're going to invite to walk with you, that is things, as you hit some hard moments, that this is the couple that you're going to go to, and they're going to help you and encourage you, and that's such a powerful relationship to have.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so sweet. So what is your suggestion for routine maintenance for a marriage?
Yeah, I would say that we all get super busy. That's the reality. We working, raising kids, and household responsibilities, church, hobbies, all that stuff. What happens is that it creates some drift. Then in the relationship, we start to slowly disconnect, and so recognizing that the conversations that happen automatically are who's going to pick up, the kids, who's going to the grocery store, what about this budgeting decision. Those conversations will always happen. We don't have to force them. But if Erin and I, my wife, if we don't spend time every day kind of just checking in and making sure that we're exploring our inner life, emotions and stressors and hopes and fears, and what are we dreaming about? If we don't talk about those things, then we really lose sight of each other, and we end up down the road feeling like married roommates. But the problem is that more that inner life conversation will never ever happen on its own. And so I think one of the best things that my wife and I have ever learned to do is just to spend 10 minutes. So it's all it takes, 10 minutes a day, talking about those inner life issues. And how we do that is we simply ask each other towards the end of the day, maybe it's at dinner, maybe it's laying in bed at night, what was the high of your day and the low of your day? And we did this last night, just laying in bed, lights off, just I held her hand, and we just talked about what went on. And it's a great way to stay current. In many ways, you're rediscovering your spouse every day, just based on just hearing about what's going on the inside. And so you protect that time by, you're not going to administrate your marriage. You're not going to talk about to-do lists and tasks. You're just going to focus on what's really going on the inside. And I tell you, that so helps us stay connected as couples.
That's awesome, because your average couple is, they're working 40 hours a week, they're juggling a lot of kids, just making that priority, carving out that little bit of time.
Absolutely, because again, what I've noticed is that most of our conversations are going to be about just the business meeting, the administrating of our marriage and family. And what happens is that monopolizes then our conversation. Honestly, that we end up administrating our marriage to death, and it becomes boring. And then there's no real incentive to try to talk. If my fear is that, anytime Erin and I start to talk, we're going to get into this, board meeting kind of feel. The couples just quit talking then over time, and that's why we have to be intentional to create, an opportunity. Again, just 10 minutes, just to check on what's going on with you and keep me updated and current on what you're going through, how you're feeling, those kinds of things.
All right. Well, you probably know this. One of the most common arguments that couples have is about finances, especially in the midst of an economic recession. Do you have any advice for that?
It's always to recognize what's really going on under the waterline. Kind of like the tip of the iceberg is, whatever financial topic now we're arguing about. But underneath that, the water, there's always going to be a fear of some sort. So maybe it's a fear of being controlled. If we have to keep talking about how to spend our money, then I feel controlled. I don't like that. Maybe it's a fear, it's an insecurity. Maybe the fear is, for the future. How are we planning, saving? What's going to happen? Are we going to have enough? But so often couples don't end up talking about the fear, what's really driving the argument. They just end up debating, the topic, and it never will help us reconnect after, we have one of those difficult discussions. And so I always encourage couples, first talk about what's really going on. And I promise if you just assume it's a fear, just say, hey, this something, we feel stuck in this conversation. Tell me how you really feeling? What's going on for you? I imagine you're worried or stressed or fearful about something. Help me to better understand that, because that's the stuff that's really worth leaning into, really caring about, first of all. And then once we identify what the real fear is, the real concern, well, then you can figure out a solution that feels good to both people. So it's kind of like, okay, once I really understand what's driving this for my wife, Erin, and I care about that and allow that to matter. Honey, I hear that you're feeling super insecure right now, and that matters to me. Then we can go, okay, so let's solve this in a way that feels good to both of us as a team. Because, in a marriage, you either win together or you lose together. There's no such thing as a win-loss. And so when Erin and I go to make decisions and solve whatever financial issues we're talking about, we always remind each other, hey, relax. Whatever we're going to decide, it's something that you and I both will feel good about. And that just relaxes us, and we're really able to figure these things out if we approach it as a team and go after the real issue first.
I've heard, I forget where I heard this, treating your spouse not as the enemy, treating the problem as the enemy. Is that kind of what you're referring to?
Totally. My wife, Erin, is never my adversary. I have an enemy. We have an enemy, and that's the evil one. He hates our marriage, and he's always going to go after our unity and our oneness. And that's why Erin is never, ever my enemy. And sometimes the best way that Erin and I deal with that is simply, I can feel at times when Erin and I are trying to work through something, it feels adversarial. In the moment that I'm sensing, wait a minute, why all of a sudden we went from playing doubles tennis to now, on the opposite sides of the net, and I'll just simply say, hey, honey, remember, you're my teammate, and we're in this together, and let's figure out something that's going to feel good to both of us. And I'm telling you, it relaxes us and sort of reorients us to what's true, which is, that's my teammate, my best friend, and we'll figure this out together.
And that leads me to my next question. What do you want to say to someone whose marriage is on the rocks?
Yeah, I would say do not wait. It's not going to miraculously get better. Do something about it. When we feel disconnected, when there's issues that we can't seem to manage well, and we keep getting stuck, when something's happened that has spun us out, let's go in and find a good Christian counselor. I mean, at least find that older, wiser couple and say, could you sit down with us, and here's what's going on. Invite people in. The enemy wants you to do this alone. He wants you to feel like you're the only one that there's no one else out there. You need to keep secret about this and quiet. And we need community. I have a good friend, Ted Cunningham, who says that marriage is a duet in need of backup singers. And that's so true. When Aaron and I go through those hard seasons, I need our church community. I need those who are in our small group. We then go and seek out a Christian counselor to go, you know what, we don't know where we're stuck, but boy, help us out. But I tell you what, the longer we wait when we're in trouble, the more likely that hearts are going to close and ultimately harden. And that's the kiss of death in a marriage, when you allow that love to grow cold, when you allow those hearts to harden. So that's what you're trying to guard against. That's why you want to go in and get help to keep your hearts from hardening and to figure out what was really going on and deal with that issue. But don't do this alone, and get help now.
And you're the vice president of marriage at one of the biggest Christian organizations in the country, and you're saying that you and your wife still go through those hard seasons.
Oh, absolutely. You know what? Because 1 Corinthians 7:28 says that for those of us who marry, you will. It's not saying you might. You will have hard times. You know, conflict is inevitable. We're going to have hard seasons. We're going to have moments that we feel disconnected. We were teaching a marriage seminar a couple weekends ago, and this guy came up. I was just asking, like, hey, come share your favorite tip and for a good marriage, and he said, my wife and I will use the term divorce. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, when those days hit to where we love each other but we don't like each other, we'll go, man, I'm feeling like it's a divorce today. And it sort of clarifies for them, it resets them. But it's true, though. There are moments that we will not like each other. And Aaron and I go through that, and we're just, divorce isn't a part of our vocabulary. That's not an option. But what is an option is to go, we're not going to stay stuck, so let's go get help. And we absolutely go and see a Christian counselor in our area, because we're not going to divorce, and I certainly don't want to stay stuck and miserable. I don't like those seasons, so let's just go deal with it and figure out how to move forward together.
All right, and my final question, this is something that my husband and I are trying to navigate. What is your advice for growing with God as a couple?
Yeah, the research says there's two things that really make the biggest difference in our spiritual relationship together as a couple. And number one is going to church on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, because what that does is that surrounds us with community. Like I said, our marriage, it takes a village to raise a marriage. We need people in our life, and church is such an important part of developing those relationships for people who will encourage us, and we can watch their marriage and take hope in that, who will go, hey, we're not letting you guys, get in trouble, so we're going to walk with you. I mean, that we need community. So attending church together on a weekly basis is so important because of that community. But then the other one is praying with each other. And what I've noticed is that, before Aaron and I go to bed, I always will ask her, hey, what's one thing that I can pray for you about for tomorrow? And it doesn't have to be this elaborate prayer. What I've noticed is that when I ask her that, when she says, pray for me about this, a lot of times I'll go, I didn't even know that was going on. Wait, tell me more about that. And it's an amazing way to keep current and updated on what your spouse is going through. And so as we're praying together, every day, as we're going to church together, that has such a strong way to strengthen our spiritual relationship together.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Smalley, for taking the time to chat with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, and you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.